A former inmate talks about men being housed inside Minnesota's only female prison and how a radical transgender policy is putting prisoners and staff at risk. Next. Rebecca Warmbo is my guest. Rebecca, good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You've been in and out of prison for more than a decade, Rebecca, but since then you've become a published author. You've dedicated yourself to prison ministry and helping other women who are behind bars. But really, in doing your good work, you've had to deal with now, I think, an almost unbelievable issue that's something I'm sure wasn't on your radar a few years ago, and that is men being housed inside Shakopee, Minnesota's only prison for women. What can you tell us about the situation there?
Well, first of all, they were considered transgender, but I'm not even saying that anymore because they're not. They're biological men. They have their male parts. They have every part that a male does. They aren't taking hormones. Once they get to women's prison, they stop taking hormones. They have beards and mustaches. They flash the women. They act like men. They catcall women. They talk about having $1 million baby. They collect semen in cups and are trying to get the younger women pregnant. And so I wouldn't consider them transgender people. I think they're biological men who are finding a way out of prison because they're pedophiles and murderers. And when you're a pedophile in men's prison, you get beat up. And so they found a way to get into a women's prison where it's easier. And as I have these emails where you talk about how it's like a kiddie camp and it's flowers and it's nice. And so they found a way out to get over there, and they get there and they just become predators. That's what every one of them has done, has been a predator since they've been in there. And when I'm talking to my friends, they're telling me this, and I was just in shock. I was like, I can't believe that there's men there. I looked it up, and sure enough, there is.
I want to get more into those emails here in just a moment, but a bit more on the backstory, the bigger picture in all of this. For one thing, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and his administration, they were behind the payments of nearly $500,000 to settle the Christina Lusk case. Lusk, a transgender woman, sued the Minnesota Department of Corrections for access to this so-called gender-affirming care a few years back now. The settlement, paid for by Minnesota taxpayers, also allowed Lusk to move to Shakopee, which, if we're being accurate, is now Minnesota's only prison for women and transgender women. But you've learned some of these men aren't necessarily even transgender through, as you're talking about this correspondence you've had with them. What can you share about that and share safely with us?
Well, first, Christina Lusk, now that man, he had breasts, but he was on his Facebook page looking for women and talking as if he's a man. And when women sent me emails about him, he was a big guy. He was violent, aggressive, and talked like a man, acted like a man, and was a man. So they aren't transgender; they're biological men. But some of these emails I've gotten ones from Bradley Servo, who was he is in there. He's a murderer. And then there's a Nathan Johnson who's now released. He was the only person that was sent over there that doesn't have a pedophile crime or a murder crime. And then Elijah Berryman, who's a pedophile and has raped some little kids and did it violently, so bad that he actually got triple the amount of time that normal people would have gotten. And when I found out about this, I reached out to them because I thought, well, I'll try and talk to them and see what they have to say. So I sent some emails off to them, and I have some responses from them that are pretty shocking. Like I asked questions about, for Bradley, I just kind of asked him, how did you become transgender? What did you think? And he said to get into the prison, he had to talk to the transgender committee and request it and wait to get approved. No one said nothing to me about having to go. That was my choice because I feel like that would be more in touch with who I am. But he says I could have just done my time where I was at Rush City as well. It was just fine. He didn't think it was bad being in Rush City. As far as the screening, again, I just requested from the committee for transfer, but I went through some other stuff in the first years of coming out. So what he's referring to is he was when he hit 2 COs, which are staff, with a pool cue and ended up getting sent out of state to a federal prison, a supermax, for 6 years. This is a man who is deemed safe to be in with women. He was sent to a supermax prison for beating up 2 COs. Since then, he's been in and out of SAG, been in trouble. He says in his email, I had some anger issues after coming back from Florida. And he said he's been pretty good for the past 4 or 5 years only. And that's the time frame right around Christina Lusk when he realized he was transgender. And why would they pick somebody who's a murderer first and who has beaten up staff? That's who they deem as appropriate, safe, and okay to move into women's prison. And when he's been in prison now, he lives next to a friend of mine actually, and he freaked out one day when he found out that they wanted him to go and get his penis surgery, and he didn't want it done. And he freaked out and he went in his room and smashed his TV and threw his stuff all around and scared her half to death. And she's traumatized by that. And it's just, it's a sickness, you know? And then what I really found pretty scary was in his email he sent to me, he's talking about a lawsuit. They all talk about lawsuits they want to do against the Shakopee, which will be us taxpayers who pay that, you know? But he says, he's hoping that he's done 30 years first off, and he's hoping he gets out this year somehow. I don't know. He says, I was wondering if I could maybe ask one thing of you. I heard a little about 2 people who work at the DOC who left and are making an issue about transgender people. And if so, would like more information on this, as one of them was my teacher for school. Now, we know that that's Alicia Beckman who's been on and who's been fighting for this. But I found that really odd that he's asking for information about them and wants to find out, you know, personal information on them. So I reported it to the DOC and told Alicia about it, and the DOC didn't respond back to me, didn't say anything. And not only does DOC not protect the women, they don't protect their staff, because these men are talking about getting strip searches and how the women staff have to do it. So, you know, they have to strip search these men, and it's not like these men have female parts. They have male parts. So when a woman staff has to go in and strip search them, they have to get naked and lift up their junk, you know, and show it. And it's not a vagina, it's a penis. And this is what these women staff are having to deal with. And then one of them doesn't even get strip searched because he's the pedophile one, I think. They don't want to strip search him, which is dangerous then to the prison, because if you don't do strip searches, how are you sure that they're not doing anything they shouldn't be doing? So they're just avoiding strip searches now because the staff don't want to do it.
You've known some of the women in Shakopee for years, Rebecca. We recently reported about Jamie Ali, who I know you know very well. She told us about some truly repulsive things going on inside Shakopee, including, as you mentioned already, bottles of semen being stored inside a man's room with the hopes of getting a female inmate pregnant to then sue the prison system. Even J.K. Rowling, the famous author, took note and responded to our story on social media. She summed it up by saying, quote, "If what this woman describes doesn't constitute cruel and inhumane punishment, I don't know what does." So talk more about that. What dangers are women now facing because of all of this? What have you heard?
Well, that it's Elijah Berryman and Sean Winding-Lim that were both doing the collecting their semen. And I wrote to Elijah and I asked him about that specifically, and he says the risk of a transgender person with the penis getting a cisgender female impregnated is really, really low. But I suppose if you stop taking hormones for at least 6 months, now how does he know 6 months? For at least 6 months, you might recover your sperm levels, which is, it's not really a point though. It's making the baseline assumption that transgender women are actually just men trying to prey on cisgender women, and it heavily sexualizes transgender people and makes them predators. That's what he said from his own mouth. And so how does he know that after 6 months that your levels are fine? I don't know, but he's received treatment from the prison, gotten hormones, and seen a transgender specialist for GCS recommendation, and all that's being paid for by us. Now, Jamie, she and I think you also talked to Chaos, that was on here too. They both filed reports on sexual harassment from Danielle, who's now out, and from these people, and filed reports to PRIA, which is the sexual investigation place where they investigate sex crimes that happen in prison. When they asked for their paperwork back, the lieutenant told them they don't have the paperwork. So they're not giving them the paperwork, because when I looked it up on the DOC site, there is no reports at all of any harassment, sexual things going on through PRIA, because the staff is not handing it through to PRIA. And they do that because they don't want to be sued. They're trying to avoid lawsuits where they have their names and stuff written down. And Jamie's gone through a terrible time with this, with these men that they flash them. I mean, they'll sit in the room and they flash them, and they masturbate, you know, with themselves in front of the women when they walk by. And it's just sick stuff that I'm shocked that we're even talking about this when we're talking about a women's prison, where when women go to prison, they should go there and you have to serve time because you've committed a crime, and that's sensible, right? But you shouldn't have to go there and be traumatized worse harassed sexually, and feel in fear for your life at every second. These women have to shower down the same hall with these men. They don't have special hallways or locked. You can't lock a door, so they have to go in there and shower, knowing that the man could walk in there at any time. And some of the men will stand outside the shower and wait for them when they come out and say stuff to them. They collect semen in cups, and this has been going on with Elijah and that Sean. They were collecting semen in cups, and they were collecting them to put them in a cup and trying to give it to a younger girl so she could impregnate herself, because in prison they call it $1 million baby, and they're trying to get somebody to be pregnant so they can sue for $1 million. That's the whole plan. That's what this whole thing has been all about. It's all about money. They just want money, and they know that they're going to get it because people have been winning lawsuits, and they're going to get out. They're going to file lawsuits. They all talk about it. They're all planning on it, and they have lawyers and everything. And for Jamie, I feel she doesn't even go out of her room anymore. She sits in her room and doesn't come out of her room. She's afraid to come out because she was abused and raped before from men, and she's terrified to come out of her room. They talk about Minnesota is supposed to be big on rehabilitation, but how are you rehabilitating these women when they're stuck in these places with these men where they're terrified? It's not going to end up well. They're not going to get out of prison. They're not going to live a good life. They're going to have to deal with that trauma, and it's just going to cause chaos. And I have some other names of men that are in the Stillwater prison that are women, and two of them have gotten breast augmentations done, and one's getting a facial reconstruction done right now. And this is money that the state we're paying for this. My money is going to this. Your money is going to this. All of our money is going to pay for this. And it's why should we? I mean, if you go to prison, if you want to be a woman or a man, whatever you want to be, if you go in there and you commit a crime, why should you continue to get this care when you should have to wait till you get out? Why can't they wait till they get out of prison to follow through and get their care? It just doesn't make sense. It's this whole agenda has just been a terrible thing.
You're right. The problems may seem obvious and outrageous as you're detailing. It doesn't seem, though, like much is being done to stop it on a statewide level. At least, do you see a day, Rebecca, when the madness ends in Minnesota in the prison system?
I don't even know what to say about it. I hope that someday it happens. And in order for it to happen, the sad thing is we'll have to lose our federal funding. They're going to take our federal funding sooner rather than later because of this. And it's only because Tim Walz refuses to follow with the federal government's guidelines on a man is a man, a woman is a woman. And it's biological. Why are we even having this argument? It's beyond me.
Rebecca Warmbo, again, thank you for being a voice for women. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
That will do it for this episode of Liz Collin Reports. We'll see you next time.